Welcome, Anand. Welcome to the Tech Catch Up Show, a Nerd for Tech Originals. And I hope we have a great session today and you enjoy this conversation with us. And let me introduce Anand to all the listeners to this podcast. Anand is an engineering manager at Mark 43. He is a coach, advisor, mentor, and he does a lot of leadership training in the corporate sector. So, yeah, this is Anand Safi, and we'll be having a good amount of conversation over the leadership, mentorship, and all those kind of stuffs in this podcast. So, Anand, just to start with this entire conversation, leadership is what I personally feel through the limited amount of experiences and knowledge I have. What leadership I feel is a very abstract term or is a very abstract phenomena, if you could say, because the leadership could be like it could be different from different perspective and it could have like many dimensions if we could talk about leadership. So what according to you are the best suited dimensions about leadership, or what in general is a leadership for you, and how does the definition of a leader fits into that leadership?
First, thank you for the kind introduction, Kushagra. Great to be here on the Tech Catch Up podcast. Yeah, as you said, along with being abstract, leadership is also a broad and loosely used term. Actually, it's used in many industries. It's industry agnostic. It is role agnostic. It is just often we'll get into it in some of that, but in terms of it's often tied to seniority actually. So
Hmm.
leadership just means that you are have some sort of higher up structure. But for me, leadership personally is practicing what you preach, and it goes beyond just advising and ideation with some sort of demonstration aspect tied to it. So if you're
Okay.
just preaching, it is more coaching. If you are just advising, that's advisory role. And if you're just ideating or validating someone's work or just working with them, that's kind of more a little bit of mentorship. So leadership is as says like leading from the front or leading by example. So that definitely has some sort of demonstration aspect tied to it beyond just having an idea or just having an opinion actually. And naturally that ties into, for me, a definition of a strong leader or an ideal leader is someone who's taking ownership, who is staying accountable to their own work, and is also empathetic. So that taking ownership or taking things in control does not mean taking charge, does not mean having an egoistic angle to that. But the folks who do this, especially without being asked to do so. So if someone tells you that you should be working on this project, that is not leadership. It's just kind of more of a role that you are asked to do, but without telling, if you're identifying a gap and making an effort to make something better or right or wrong, that is kind of you're taking a self leadership initiative right there.
Also, like over the years, like when you started with of such kind of roles, like how has your definition and through your experiences, how has your definition and your perspective about leadership grown or has changed over the years? Because I believe that we all, like at the beginning of something, we all have a little bit of less understanding because it is just from the surface level, and as we go delve deep down into such into the nitty gritties of different things, we get to know more about, we get to experience more about those stuffs, and we actually grow ourselves, or we actually become more proficient with it, and we our perspective about that changes a lot, like from the initial stages. So like how has your perspective and your definitions of leadership changed?
Yeah, absolutely. It has changed a lot. I would say more recent than early on, probably for the first half of my career, when I was growing into my engineering IC roles as an individual contributor, or just kind of being tasked, as I said, like not being told to do so, but the work was kind of cut out for me. I didn't have to think twice on what I'll be working on. It's kind of decided at the executive level or at the leadership level back then, in terms of this person will be working on so and so task or project actually. So during that time, for me, just not knowing the intricacies of this different disciplines, actually, it was associated with seniority, as I mentioned earlier. Like I often
Hmm.
saw like my higher up or the person who is leading the team, they would say the tech lead or the division lead is leadership. Definitely, that is true that they are leaders because they have the title of leads. They are leading the divisions, but leadership goes beyond leading. Leading is could be kind of a role or responsibility or a job that you end up doing for a company, but leadership can be practiced at all levels actually. So that is exactly what I was saying. Like if you are trying to start a new initiative, if you are starting if you're trying to start a new, say, social club in your company, if you're trying to start a new learning group, actually, you are taking lead of that effort or initiative to make that possible. So it became more and more clear to me that with a senior role or with seniority, leadership just becomes a part, but it's not that that is the only definition or what leadership means actually. Leadership can be demonstrated or can be surfaced from anyone and everyone in the company, irrespective of the role they are doing or the discipline or the area they are working in that regard. So that is where I realized like leadership and management, those principles started to diverge a lot for me actually.
Also, like when it comes to leadership and when it comes to the responsibilities and roles of a leader, one thing which is very much important, what I feel, is taking the accountability of things.
Yeah.
So a leader has to be accountable for his actions or whatever thing he demonstrates or preaches. So like what I feel with like what I feel is that how much accountability, or actually we just can't quantify it, but in abstract terms, how how much of like how much accountable a leader should be for his actions or for whatever he preaches out, because after all whatever he is doing, there will be a set or there will be a lot of people who will get affected, if not fully,
Yeah.
to some extent. So how much accountability does a leader hold on the influence that he or she might cause to the people who look up to him or her?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great point. I mentioned accountability quite a few times, but again, there is no metric to put it into place that you are being accountable, you're not. I think it is developing a mindset and a routine. So, in terms of accountability, the way I think it's best to approach for a leader, or where I have seen great leaders approach, is at multiple levels, right? So, the first is any initiative or change that we are discussing or talking hypothetically should be tangible or should be small to begin with. You don't want to do a sweeping change that, as you said, impacts a lot of the folks that either work with you or might not work with you, because there's definitely
Hmm.
internal and external dependencies actually. So make sure that you are making it a phased or iterative approach in terms of the initiative. First, test the waters, as they say, do an MVP, a POC, see if this program works or this new process works actually. So make sure that you are first kind of breaking it up into actionable pieces. The second is make sure that you're making any work or change visible. So what a lot of people do, or in terms of leadership roles, is they just take this as a norm or the new given, and then they just start putting it out or just using it day to day without giving the right context or without giving the right heads up to folks.
Hmm.
So make it visible that this is coming or this is what we are planning. Leadership could be a group of folks or an individual, like a committee as well. So make sure that you are making people aware. Ideally, try to get their feedback early as well, because in the end, it takes a village to steer the success of a company, right, in the right direction. So you want to make sure that the people who will be impacted are at least made aware, if not involved in the planning phase actually. And then if there is no quantifiable metric for the accountability. Make sure that the work you are doing or the work you're proposing or that initiative has at least a morale quantified actually. So to take a pulse of how is it going or keep track actually. So iterate and evolve. It's not that you should be rigid on your ideal roadmap or vision and then just
Hmm.
force it irrespective. Plan for the high level goal, take the first step, make sure that it's in kind of in the right direction, else course correct, evolve, and then see what could the next stage lead to actually. So that is how you could keep accountability, by kind of breaking it into smaller initiatives, making it visible across the company or the people you would be leading or will be impacting, and then always taking in feedback from time to time.
Since you spoke about making the people aware about, if not completely involving them, at least make them aware about a brief idea about what you are planning or something about that. There is one thing that a leader is someone has a who has a vision, or who can clearly see the vision, because
Yeah.
a lot of people do have a vision, but they're not very much clear with it. So a leader is someone, I guess, who has a clear picture about the vision, about the big picture in terms of long goals. So he is very
Yeah.
much clear about what the scenarios would be, things he or she is planning, what the consequences, he or she would be very much clear about the consequences that those actions would lead. Now, when you say that you should make a lot of people aware about your decisions, would that thing cause a bit of obstruction in your vision? Because then you might come up with a lot of different opinions and a lot of different suggestions, and there must be a point where things can get obstructed in your vision, like what you are trying to solve with your with whatever activities you are doing. It might those suggestions, those things would cause an obstruction to those. So how do you go about this?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. That's an excellent question because, as you said, like you probably have the most context and know what you want to go for and what it'll take to get it. But then bringing more opinions or more cooks in the kitchen will just probably
Hmm.
derail your momentum or your kind of ideal operations. So the way I would say for this is. It could work in some cases while you have the perfect vision and the roadmap and exactly the work cut out, mapped out. But I would say probably most of the times a vision in very loose terms is still a bet. It's still a vision, right? That if all things fall into place and if I have all the perfect kind of opportunities and the market conditions or our own company conditions working in the favor, then we'll make that vision a reality actually. So a vision is still very green field and it is a little bit castles in the air situation. So
Hmm.
in order to make it a reality, you need to s- go up to the stage, stand up in front of a crowd, the people who will make that revision a success and say that you are equally vulnerable in terms of there is no perfect plan cut out. There is always, you have most of it figured out, but there will be a lot of polishing and then just a lot of collective effort that will go into place because
Hmm.
vision could be from one person, but making it a reality will not be from one person. It will take a lot of collaboration. So even if you don't want people to obstruct or it has consequences, if you don't make them aware, each of them will start to develop their own version of your vision. So it's going to go south or it's going to kind of derail anyway because you think people are working towards a common goal, but if you don't share it or if you don't make them aware, their common goal in each of their minds is going to be different actually. The
Hmm.
second is if you share that vision, there might be some other folks who are thinking of the same thing or did not have the courage to go up, and you get a new idea or new perspective that probably were the missing pieces of the puzzle in your master plan, and then that'll help you even fine tune it actually. So that's why I think I would definitely prefer, or the way I've seen success is where information was shared up front and there were no surprises left till the end. Otherwise, if you open things to everyone's interpretation, then the end result ends up being way different than you ideally how you had thought of actually.
Also, like now, Anand, there is a lot of like due to the coming up of social media, a lot of influencer community is growing. Now, how do you like? Obviously, there is and there should be a very differentiating line between what who is an influencer and who is a leader. People are confused what they consume from an influencer, and they treat it something that has been given to them or that has been feeded to them from a leader. So how do you differentiate, like what how do you feel, or how do you go about differentiating an influencer and a leader in the current scenario, in the modern world scenario, where social media plays a very impactful role in defining a lot of lives?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've always thought in terms of mentorship, coaching, management, leadership, which are corporate terms, but it's different in terms of influencer, where just people in the industry with strong opinions also would surface and would kind of impact your decision making or your thought process from what a leader will take. So let me think about that for a quick second. So yeah, I think for the way I see it is influencers again is misused in terms of the word itself inside, like influence, right? They are
Hmm.
it the way we see it being portrayed or being thought of in the social media aspect, especially is where someone is trying to fundamentally change your opinion. They're
Hmm.
trying to persuade you. They're trying to make believe in something, or they're trying to sell you a concept or a belief that you're probably not yet sold onto. You're kind of 50-50, or you are not even kind of have a strong opinion about it. So that is where they're trying to lend influence onto your minds actually. That just naturally, if we put it that way, it just feels like it's a more tad bit negative term when you compare versus leaders, coach, mentorship. But I think
Hmm.
influencer, or just influence, can be used also in a very positive aspect.
Hmm.
I tie it more with inspiration. So the
Hmm.
way I see influence being used, or the examples that we see, is again, it goes to that somebody is just having a solid work routine. Like, we get distracted, say, during the day or work with meetings, or say if a Slack message comes or if there's an email, I would pause and then go to that. But someone would have a disciplined work ethic. They would have like hours of deep work, and then they would only set time to do these kind of administrative things, or just kind of respond to messages which are non-urgent end of the day or like early next day. So that is where they have a positive influence in terms
Hmm.
of the work style or the team. They are in some form leading by example, right? They are just untethered by whatever is going on, or like how much people are conversing in the water cooler channel, or just sharing random memes or GIFs, but they probably are sticking to their routine, or they have kind of developed this disciplined routine for them. So that does create over time positive influence, which is admirable, and you are inspired actually. So influencer can also be used for a lot of good habit forming activities rather than opinions. Actually, people use it a lot in terms of opinions that as an
Hmm.
influencer, I say this place is good or this thing is good and this is bad. But there's a lot of just influence that comes from how someone is operating that you can take, I think, a lot of inspiration from actually. And with leadership, again, comparing that with leadership, uh, it's more about visionary kind of aspect. So it's more about believing in something in the future, and then getting the team folks or your people around you excited about it. Actually, the influence might be in the present, that you are trying to influence what is happening now, or you're trying to form a routine that is current actually, while leadership has to be a little bit more forward thinking in that approach.
Also, Anand, how do you like what are your opinion, or what do you feel like, how has the leadership and the role of a leader in general evolved or has changed over the years, like since like we are going more and more digital, and there is a lot of influence of social media. How does the role of a leader and leadership in general evolved or changed over the period, like in the past 10 to 20 years? How has it changed and grown into, like, has the responsibilities of a leader grown, or the responsibilities of a leader, the leader has to be more responsible towards his action, because like responsibility is something which has always been entangled to a leader, but how has the magnitude of those responsibilities changed when we see in terms of like over the 10 to 20 years? How has those responsibilities changed?
Yeah, that makes sense. It has definitely changed actually, and the way it has changed is I'm not sure if this will be perceived in a negative sense or something, but with social media, there is now a lot more visibility, as we said, into the operational tactics or the mindset of a leader. And what that has done has forced companies to develop these notions of inclusive leadership. We hear
Mm.
about diversity and inclusion efforts a lot nowadays, especially in the last decade. So that's why leaders now have to be even kind of expanding their own kind of opinions or mindset in terms of what does inclusive leadership mean actually. And that could tie into something that we were talking about earlier, is getting feedback from the people that it will impact, the thing that or the
Mm.
change that you're working on, including the folks or your peers right from the get-go, bringing new opinions in the mix actually. So leadership does not directly come with, it does come with some sort of authority, but it does not come with being an authoritarian that you dictate that this is what we are doing. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer, but it's not that we are going to change anything, either fall in line or fall out of place kind of situation. So that has changed. It's not that it always used to happen, but there was less of a questioning attitude for people who would be looking up to a leader, or who would be operating under a certain leadership notion in terms of what they were being asked to do. So now they have a real opinion. They get a chance to say, have a say up front, and that whole inclusive leadership in terms of bringing in different perspectives, irrespective of where a person might be originating from, what their gender outlook is, whatever that is. It's just kind of bringing that opinion in the mix. Informed opinion is really crucial. That is one. The second is there's a lot of change in terms of the trainings that the companies do. You will hear a lot of days that companies are doing throughout the year various trainings for their leaders. They definitely do for all employees, but for leaders or managers as well, who have some leadership responsibilities in build, they do a lot of trainings, and these are around how do you do one-on-ones, how do you have an empathetic outlook, how are you making sure that there's no unconscious bias, even if you don't feel, maybe just traditionally the way you have spoken, operated, or thought of as your normal team in engineering, or just a normal mix of who are your engineers, that does lead to some sort of preconceived notion. So that's why there's a lot of training, and leadership is changing in that way actually. With visibility, there comes a lot of kind of scrutiny as well at times. So companies are making sure that leaders are getting the necessary tools and support to make sure what it truly encompasses, because their role is crucial in terms of it can have long lasting effects on the team or the psyche of a person who's working with them actually. So how you are speaking with someone, how you're working with someone, has a lot of effect in that regard. So it's just probably leaders had lacked more training and support, and that's why it was a very kind of assumed discipline that whatever someone is doing is right and that is leadership. But now there is a more general framework in the industry that is upcoming with inclusivity and a lot of training around unconscious bias and other things.
So like you talked about the training and all those stuffs that are done in today's world to train leaders. Now, what are certain traits, or is like this question might be not even valid, but for the sake of my curiosity for satisfying, like I have this question. We have been taught and we have been grown with this thought that leaders are born, or people who are good at leading. The leadership is something which is inbuilt and that comes naturally to certain people. It is something which is not like everyone that's not everyone's cup of tea. Being a leader or
Right, right.
taking that leadership role is not everyone's cup of tea. So now, when we talk about different training sessions and whatever the practices have been going on to build leaders, to train more people and helping them out to get those leadership roles, do you have any feeling that our leaders, that there are certain traits which are inbuilt and which can be called that these people having these traits are inborn leaders, or leadership is something which can be purely taught and leaders could be purely trained?
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll always get a general consensus on whatever answer we end up giving,
Hmm.
but I believe the latter, that leadership does have some inbuilt qualities to begin with. You can teach someone everything you need to, and again, that's kind of what is happening around, right?
Hmm.
Leadership is becoming a demanding discipline. So with the company trainings, or if the role of a leader is expanding, that not only you get the work done, but make sure that your employees have work life balance, or just make sure that if you're putting something onto a new initiative, there is no burnout in that regard. So that's where the lines of leadership and management get blurry. But if managers or folks realize with this training set to be a leader, there are certain attributes that you need to possess. There's a certain kind of way you need to get your team to work together or just talk with folks. It would start to show that if they thought that this is too much or if this is too overwhelming, and eventually they will bow out, or they will just find an alternative way, right? So you will realize now that even with a lot of training, people actually start to realize that for their leadership style responsibilities, it's not something that they're cut out for, or it's not something that they would rather be doing actually. And that is where a couple of traits or characteristics come into play that I believe people who are, as I say, born leaders, right, have right from the start, which is you should be comfortable with change. As I said, like for me, leadership is a little bit forward thinking as well, visionary, as we said. So if you are not comfortable with change, because there will be change, there will be impacts, there will be kind of just a lot of things different to make that vision a reality. It's not always a kind of roses in a garden situation. There will be tough choices. There will be decisions that might not be in everyone's best interest actually. Over time they will be, but for the short term it's difficult to think of it that way. So first is having that comfortable with change attitude, and it's not again that is the only way. Some people like the constant changing mindset, some people like it stability actually. So it's just a different thing. So that is one thing that I feel that where born leaders can outlast taught leaders in that sense. The second is also a can do attitude, right? That you need to be kind of patient enough that you need to keep believing, even if all the people with you stop believing at some point, if you stop believing, then that just dismisses the whole purpose or mission, or whatever work you've done till now. So it is not having it's definitely good to have milestones and checkpoints, but it's not having a quick reward mindset, right? It's an infinite game versus a finite gain in that sense. So you need to make sure that you can believe and have like a can do attitude, or just find that silver lining in the clouds that surface during your execution.
How do you go about the hierarchy that has to be there, or like I don't know much about it, but is it very it is important to have a hierarchy or a hierarchical system in leadership also?
Yes, while I've been talking a lot about self leadership and anyone can be a leader, but hierarchy is needed. It's definitely needed, and that is more from, again, a structure and stability standpoint. Actually, that is because as much as you want to empower folks to take initiatives and just lead or just take upon charge of whatever they feel is right, you need someone to be with some sort of authority to make sure that they are doing due diligence of what are the initiatives that are going on in the company. So hierarchy for me is somebody higher up who has been in that ground level leadership position before, who understands the intricacies and details. So you give someone the authority, but that authority comes with enough experience that they have kind of been in those shoes before. Another important point of hierarchy is bringing unity. So if you have someone in a hierarchical structure, you would at least listen to them when they want to instill unity. So as much as you want to, again, as I said, like, want everyone to have their own opinion, and you want everyone to kind of bring their point forward, it could lead to conflict resolution. It could lead to conflict, or it could lead to a deadlock situation. That is when somebody in a position higher up in the hierarchical structure can come in and just either unify in terms of that, whether they were both the opinions are geared towards the same end goal, it's just they're approaching different, or there needs to be a conflict resolution, and the leader at higher up needs to uh, either pick a side or pick a blended approach in terms of what they feel is right given their experience or expertise actually. So instilling a sense of authority and unity has benefits. Otherwise it can be much more disjointed and chaotic actually, for a truly flat structure where everyone is empowered to do their at will kind of initiatives.
Since you yourself do leadership management, you are a coach, you are an advisor, so how do you define or restrict your roles, like when you are acting as an advisor to an organization, how do you limit yourself from taking the roles and responsibilities of a leader in that sense? Or if in case you are if you're coaching someone, then how do you restrict yourself in going into the domains of advisory? So how do you have that fine line dividing each of your roles when you are dealing
Yeah.
with?
Right. So, and that's a great point. So, for me, most of my leadership work has been just in the engineering leadership space. So,
Hmm.
working with product development folks or working with product development companies. So, I'm sure leadership is extending much more beyond my own small domain of engineering leadership. So, I'll give my answer in terms of engineering leadership context. As you said, like, I would say leadership for me, I would be doing most in my role at Mark 43, in my current role, actually, because I'm leading teams, I'm leading projects, I'm leading initiatives. So that is where leadership comes in. All the other kind of aspects are trying to get companies or individuals to kind of take kind of a lesson or just a kind of a success story from my own leadership experiences to
Mm.
empower or kind of have leaders in their own organizations or leaders themselves do some of that same work in their own teams or organizations actually. And again, it's not unidirectional. As I said, it's probably more bidirectional. In those conversations, I equally end up learning a lot and adapting my own leadership style when I go back to my teams, because in the current world each team is set up different. It's remote distributed, people with a lot of diverse backgrounds and kind of roles that they come from. There's a lot of scenarios at play. So with this diverse teams comes different challenges, right? Might be time zone differences, might be someone is new to the team, might be someone is trying to establish trust on rapport. So with my team and my projects, there could be a finite set of problems at any given time, or situations or that we need to brainstorm or come up with ideas for. But when I expand or talk to people in the community like companies or other leaders, that just increases tenfold in terms of their own team setup, their own structure. So that just gives me a lot of critical thinking, creative juices flowing to, okay, in this situation, what would we do? And that is kind of most of my mentorship or advising with companies. So with companies, it is more about the roadmap and the direction. I want to make sure that whatever they are scoping or they are promising is feasible. So mostly it is technically feasible, and we are not kind of aiming for the moon or shooting for the moon in terms of what is realistic. You want to make yourself attractive as a new company, but how can we limit the scope? How can we do a opportunity assessment? How can we do a market fit in terms of what is technically possible, and then making that there is making sure that there's enough user demand. So a lot of that advising is just advising is not again a top down. It's just advisors probably are at least 3 to 5 in established companies. So it's just an informed opinion in the mix with some credibility that I would present actually. In terms of mentorship and coaching, it is more so about giving lessons or teaching someone, but it's less of teaching someone, but it's more so about validating their own ideas. As leaders in their own roles, they might be thinking of their next change or initiative, or they might be thinking of this is the vision that they want to have for the team. And we talk about how they would present to the team. Have I been kind of been in their role or shoes before, that I had a similar initiative to pitch? How did I approach it? If not, how would I approach it? And it's more of a conversational style that would lead to simulating like ideas or just kind of next steps. So it's about validating and supporting whatever they think as leaders, and it's just more about peer support and collaboration in that sense actually. uh, and I want to make sure that, especially as we discussed earlier, that when these leaders are presenting this vision or change to their teams or companies, they make sure that they are pitching it as a proposal that they believe in, they want others to believe in, open to opinions, but not as this is the direction we're heading in. We don't want to sound it like they're going to control the situation and teams and kind of own the people's work styles from now on. So it's not about a controlling mindset. It's more about a collaborative mindset for any new leadership initiative actually.
Well, that was really brilliantly put. And thanks a lot, Anand, for joining us in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And it was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was great, Kushara. Thank you so much. These questions are just in a given hour. It's amazing to bring a decade of experience to our thoughts to words, and then just articulate that in some form. So, thank you for this mental exercise for me.
Thanks a lot. It was completely our pleasure. And I hope our listeners would enjoy the podcast the way I did. And thanks for joining, Anand.
Thank you so much, Kushagra. Thanks for having me.